Well everyone, it's time for us to go ahead and take a look at the Samsung Galaxy S20 and compare it against the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE and see which specific phone you should go and pick up. Now, I will leave both these phones linked down in the description. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, the Galaxy S21 FE was a phone that came out last year and it was supposed to be like a budget tier cheap phone, but not really like a cheap phone. It's supposed to be like a mid-tier phone from 2022 with the same parts of a phone from 2021. So it's almost like, it's kind of aged up a little bit. But this phone, right, is so much cheaper now than what it was last year. Apparently on Amazon, it's less than $250. That is a pretty good deal for this type of phone. It's not a super old outdated phone, and the internals of this device are actually pretty good. On the front of this phone, you have a 6.4-inch dynamic AMOLED display. It's a 1080p panel, and it's a 120Hz display. So visibly, when I look at the Galaxy S21 FE, it's a pretty big, large display. It has a hole punch display too, and it's 120Hz. That is some really good stuff to kind of have on a device like this, especially in this specific year, because if you were to go and buy a phone with a 60Hz display, it's already being outdated. So in this specific case, smooth display, hole punch display, this phone looks very good on the front for sure. On the Samsung Galaxy S23 though, it is a little bit of a smaller 6.1-inch dynamic AMOLED display. So it's a little tiny bit smaller. It's not the biggest deal in the world, but it can be kind of an annoyance for some people. If you're wanting to get a phone that is a little bit bigger, clearly the S21 FE is going to be the way to go in this specific situation. But this phone, you're still getting 1080p display, you're still getting 120Hz. It's a very, very good display. I will say that phone probably gets brighter overall as well. But beyond both, definitely the S23 is the better looking one, but some people do prefer a bigger phone, and that's where the S21 FE kind of steps in. On the bottom, they both have USB-C ports, both support Samsung DeX, which is awesome. No microSD card slots on either one of these phones, so keep that in mind. They both have IP68 dust and water resistance as well, which is great. And on the back of these phones, it's a little tiny bit of a difference here. So on the back of the Galaxy S21 FE, we do have a triple camera setup. We have a slight camera bump on the back, but this is a plastic back on that phone. It's a frosted plastic back. Some people like it, some people don't mind it. Me personally, I'm kind of getting a little bit more used to it, but it's still kind of annoying to have like plastic back when I know Samsung, they could just make it a little bit more expensive feeling and put even a standard glass back would be perfectly fine. Like on the back of the Galaxy S20, put it on the back of this phone, that'd be fine. Unfortunately, they're not going to do it, but it's still okay. It's still a good feeling phone nonetheless. On the back of the Galaxy S23 though, we are getting this frosted glass back. Now, like I mentioned, frosted glass backs are great. I prefer glass backs over plastic backs, but I will say this is still a good feeling back for sure. You do have that triple camera setup in the top left, but you can see there's no longer a camera bump. I don't know what that's about. I think definitely a camera bump would have been better, but there's not much we can do about it in that standpoint, and I guess it is what it is. So on the outside, that kind of covers it up. There's really not like a whole lot of other things to kind of talk about here. They're both kind of like the same type of design, but clearly the Galaxy S23 with its, frosted glass back, with its, better feeling, premiumness and all that, definitely going to be the better phone here in terms of the outside than the S21 FE. So in terms of the outside, that covers it up there. In the camera department though, this is where things get very interesting, and there's already some pretty big differences here. So on the back of the Galaxy S21 FE, we have a triple camera setup, a 12 megapixel wide, an 8 megapixel telephoto, then a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, where the Galaxy S23 has a 50 megapixel wide, a 10 megapixel telephoto, and then a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera. So you are kind of getting an upgraded wide angle lens on the Galaxy S23. You're also getting a 12 megapixel front facing camera on the Galaxy S23, where the S21 FE actually has a 32 megapixel camera. So that is actually very interesting that there's that big of a jump from the Galaxy S21 FE's camera on the front than the S23's, but megapixels aren't on everything. They both can do 4K at 60 on the back, they both can do 4K at 60 on the front, but the Galaxy S23 has the added capability of having an 8K video on the back of that specific phone. That is actually a very, very crazy, frame rate and resolution to film in on that type of device. You can realistically do almost anything on 8K. Even the majority of phones still do not support 8K video, including, the iPhones, including the Google Pixels. So you are still going to be at a very, very good situation for the most part by getting a phone like the Galaxy S23, but even the S21 FE with its camera, it's still very good. There's still a lot of features that overlap between both cameras. So you're not going to go pick up one camera over the other just because of its camera, but do keep in mind that that camera on the S23 is substantially better in my opinion with its better features than the S21 FE. So in that perspective, that kind of covers it up there. Now in the software department, both these phones are good. They're still going to be supported with software, but the big thing to keep in mind is that the S21 FE is basically going to track the Galaxy S21 with its software updates. So that has been the best thing or the big thing to kind of keep in mind here, is that with something like the Galaxy S21 FE, that is going to be a phone, and since the Galaxy S21 FE has pretty much the same internals as the Galaxy S21, you should probably expect the Galaxy S21 FE to last as long as the S21. Meaning it's going to last like 2 versions less than the S23. Is it a big deal? Not really. I mean, that phone's still going to be supported for quite a bit of time. I mean, the S20 is still supported. So you're probably going to get another software or two out of the S21 FE, but still the S23, I mean, this is going to be the main reason, or one of the main reasons, you would go and switch from an S21 FE to an S23. That phone is going to be lasting about 2 years longer than the S21 FE, so keep that in mind. And one other thing is with its software updates, you are actually going to be getting not really day one updates, but when the update comes out, the latest phone is going to be more in line of, or more ahead of getting that update. There's still a lot of phones out there that probably still haven't gotten One UI 5. So keep that in mind. If you get the latest phone, you're going to be getting the updates faster from Samsung. So other than that though, there's not really a big reason to go from an FE to the S23 for software right now. But in the next year, kind of expect to update. Now on the performance side, the FE had that Qualcomm Snapdragon 888 chipset inside, with 6 GB RAM on the base model, but it did go up to 8 GB of RAM. The S23 had that Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chipset inside with 8 GB of RAM. Now, as I mentioned before, having a phone like the S23, very, very good and very good capable phone. It's a very solid device. There's not that much to complain about from either one of these phones, but I will tell you the S23 did make massive improvements in the performance from the 8 Gen 1 to the 8 Gen 2. The 888 though was, from my opinion, one of the more stable chipsets that Samsung made. A lot of people like that 888 chipset. So because of that, the S21 FE is still in a very good spot. In fact, I've said this before in like every video, a lot of gaming videos I've seen on Android pretty much rely or kind of focus around their videos on a lot of devices that have this 888 chipset inside, that's inside the S21 FE. So because of that, that chipset is still very good. There's a lot of handheld like Android gaming devices that have chipsets that are even worse than that one. So personally, I think that type of chipset is fine no matter what you're really going to do with it. But if you need more power, the S23 is going to be there for you. That's kind of the best way to kind of think about it. The S23 is still very good. The S20 FE is still very good too, but the S23 is definitely the better one here. Now in the battery life department, funny enough, the S21 FE has a much bigger size battery, the 4500 mAh battery there, versus the S23's 3900 mAh battery. So take that as you will. I think the S23, like I said before, is going to be the better phone overall, but you might be getting better battery life from something like the S21 FE, which is very, very interesting. So to kind of sum up this whole video, what I'll tell you is, I think the S21 FE is a very good phone for the price tag. I think that phone has depreciated in the price tag standpoint quite a bit, which was expected. But I think that phone still has a lot of capability, still has a lot of power within it. And I would 100% recommend buying that phone if you're on a budget. But if you have a little bit more money, getting a Galaxy S23 might be the better way to go. That is a very, very good phone. There's probably some weird and quirky things that we'll find out, throughout this year. But I think the S23 so far, from everything I've tested for it, it's gotten better. And I definitely do think that is probably the phone I would recommend buying for, a majority of people. So that kind of covers it up. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.